Hi there, everyone. It's Gordon from Deloitte, and I have the pleasure, because no one wants to listen to me, to have two interesting people with me. There's Paige from New York. She works at global marketing at IBM, a company I think we all can learn from a lot in terms of technology, but also in terms of brand and marketing. So I'm super excited to have her here. And I got Björn. Björn is also from the more tech side. He runs all things AI at Deloitte in Germany. So I'm here to find out what you guys and girls have to tell each other. So
should be fun.
Hopefully.
Looking forward.
So the starting point to me is very simply, we've been through a lot over the last 3 years. Everything has been shaken up. But that also means there's a lot to shape for the future right now. There's a big role for creativity these days. So where do you think is the strongest role for creativity in the future? What do you want it to do?
Yeah, certainly. So I think I would actually start by talking about a few of the sessions we saw here this week. So actually, Ryan Reynolds, of all people, he's like the big star that's been here. And one of the things he said earlier on stage in response to a variety of different questions, creativity is a necessity these days, right? And we all know, like the Plato quote, like creativity is the mother of invention, or necessity is the mother of invention. I think the two are actually very tightly married. And you see that in the work here. You see that in sort of the world we're living in. You even think of something like the Pfizer vaccine, right? If we want to go back into the dark ages. But looking forward, I think it's almost been an inspiration for us. And I think the creative energy and the agencies and the teams on site here are really, you can sort of see it all coming together in the work that we're celebrating, and the types of conversations we're having, and the types of people that we're involving in those conversations, right? So we're literally at the intersection of technology and AI and all the big tech in the world. So it's great.
So Björn, what is AI creating?
What is AI creating?
Wow.
Well, a bus, certainly.
Good luck with that one. I got the easy question. I got the softball.
No, I think it's creating, stirring up. Yeah, it's a longer technology, right? I mean, you're working on it for a while. It's out there for a while, but it's been stirring up. I think not just the tech scene, but now, if you like to say, society as a whole, because there are many things right now happening which are really out there. You know, there are pictures being generated by tools, being AI. Music is generated by AI or completed, right? And there are many discussions like, should that have been done, or is that actually creative? If a tool is doing that, like where does it stop? Where does it end? And I think it's very useful, literally as a tool to enable people to go faster, if you like, right? I mean, at least for me, if you say be creative, here's a blank page, that's a bit harder for me to start than when you go like, well, there's an idea or 20, which one do you like and where would you like to work on? And I think such things, and I can really kind of speed up.
So AI can bring in variety in all idea process, or in a couple of idea processes.
I think it's variety. I don't know, but I think it can push you out of your box, so to speak, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So it can. Sorry.
No. Continue.
It can generate like things you didn't think about. They might not really make sense, but they might bring you onto a new track, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to add, just at IBM, the way we look at it, not necessarily variety, but it's the ability to focus on, broader scale things, right? The space and the vastness of the opportunity now, because a lot of the work is being done by machine learning, so you're able to complete tasks much quicker. You even think about the Siri device in your phone, like you're constantly multitasking all day. That's a more consumer example, but you can imagine that at scale with all of these massive corporations and companies that we work with hand in hand. The efficiencies get greater. It's kind of like a big optimization circus and opportunity, and we don't even really know what's on the other end, which is really exciting, but can also be quite challenging.
And I think it's really, like to add to that, I think the powers also can really personalize, right? Like if you want to, if you run it with AI, you can basically do the rough picture, but then the details can also be worked out, right? So you need to give it constraints, but in there you can really run a lot of stuff itself. So on top of that, yeah.
One reason why I'm so excited to have you here, Paige, is, IBM is one of the companies that pushed AI. I mean, I'm old. When I grow up, IBM had the first computer who beat the chess world champion. And with hindsight, that was easy because then you guys came up with the computer who actually won at Jeopardy. So where do you want to take this next? What's your from your IBM's perspective? What's your next thing where you want to take it?
So it's
If
interesting.
you can talk about it.
No, yeah. I mean, so I can give you guys, my point of view on it, and maybe a little bit of insight from our team. But it's funny you bring up, Jeopardy and chess. Jeopardy was in 2011. That's 10 years ago now. So the amount that we've really moved forward in terms of, one, the technology, but two, the application, right? Jeopardy was meant to be this way to show consumers the promise of AI, right? Like, what is the capability in your day-to-day life? Yeah. IBM is a big B2B company, so all of our clients are cruise liners and advertising agencies and big financial institutions, right? So I think what you've seen in the last 10 years since your example is a really deep knowledge and application of that. And you guys know, like, everything takes an MVP. I think through that period, we've learned a ton. And I think what you're going to see, my perspective at least, you see the intersection of AI with other technologies like blockchain and quantum, right? You're going to have this accelerated, point of view from all the different big tech companies, but the capability that we're going to have to even expand, existing, business problems, whatever. And I'll give you an example, right? So you think about the weather. IBM actually does own the weather company, world's largest and most accurate forecaster, if I could. But you think about all of the weather data that we have around the world, right? So from governments to local communities, people are moderating the weather and they're collecting millions and millions of data points. Right now, we can predict like big typhoons, monsoons, but you take that information, you layer on and continue to layer on the learning and the algorithm through, artificial intelligence as a means, and then you plug in something like quantum that has, 100x computing power. It's probably way more than that, so please don't quote me. And then you're able to, predict these massive climate tragedies, 5 months, 6 months, 1 year in advance, right? Like, we're almost outsmarting Mother Nature, which is a little terrifying, but at the same time, like, you can think about that one minor example and how that expands into everything we do day to day. And then, you saw like the black swan event of the pandemic. Yep. That was a massive opportunity for creativity, and you saw all the companies reinventing themselves around it. So anyway, long way to say, I think there's a ton of opportunity. You just got to pick our spots.
And I like that you highlight positive examples.
Because
there's a lot of discussions around the German angst. Not everybody sees the good things, but I think that's there are many more good things.
Lots of good.
So, since we're in Cannes, advertising, historically it's been an advertising place, but it's moving more and more into a marketing place, also tech place and so on. From all the things you've seen, the cases, what was your favorite case here?
That's a tough one. I mean, I'm so biased, right? So I'm like, the IBM case, right? I think... Well, I'll say this. I'm really excited about tomorrow. So for those who are probably going to watch the playback, it's going to be the Lions. So announcement of all the great big awards and everyone's been working on over the years. For me, more broadly, the things that are most impactful, honestly, it's kind of the stuff that we've been doing for a while. It's just people that are doing it a little different. You see like the work that Ogilvy's doing with Dove to talk about race and ethnicity and kind of opening that conversation in such an artful and graceful way. So for me, those types of activations are really interesting. I don't know. That one's kind of tough. That's a tough one. As a non-marketer, your perspective on the week so far?
It's a little perspective so far, so I'm looking forward to the other half of the week here. But
Okay, then one more on. I think it gets really interesting when you have AI mixing and matching with humans. Bjorn, can you explain a little how that could work and what we can make out of it?
How that could work. I think I think what Paige just mentioned is a good example, right? With the weather and then going on. And adding more to it, I think there are two ways it's looked at the moment. It's like you have an AI sitting here and somebody else sitting here, and they collaborate. And the other perspective is very much like you're there as a human, right? And then having a tool. I think I'm more on that side.
Yeah.
And then working together is really like it's literally, you know, as I said earlier, it can help generate ideas. It's not necessarily going to generate the one idea that you wanted, but it can certainly help you inspire or, you know, go somewhere where you wouldn't have thought of and bring that forward. Or in the more detailed perspective, you know, you have a rough sketch and it can kind of fill in the gaps and make suggestions that way. So, and this collaboration, I think that's pretty powerful how this can at the moment work together. And then you get the discussion quickly, like who's the creative one, right?
Yeah.
Given that the human at the end decides what's going out and what's staying, it's probably on the human side.
The other thing I would add, totally agree with everything you've said. Scale, like scale to me is like just the like low hanging fruit here. You think about, like bias detection services, right? So, you know, we've built all of these machines that run the world, you know, broadly speaking, 10, 20, 30 years ago. Of course, no developer goes into the conversation and says, I'm going to build bias into X, Y, and Z. That's never the implication, but, you know, as time goes on, you start to sort of see how, the algorithms and the work underlying is actually producing very biased outcomes. So you have something like artificial intelligence, and I know we're hyper-focused on that right now, but a variety of different technologies that help to sort of funnel through that and make sure that we're having a smarter approach, even to legacy work, but informing what we do in the future. And why that matters for something like advertising is because we're feeding the conversations that are happening in culture, right? So you think about, you take any product, right? Like the advertising that, you know, Gordon's going to receive versus, you know, myself or someone else in the room. That does have an effect on us down the line. And again, that's only a minute example, but that at scale it's crazy. So it's the ability to scale, but in addition, exactly.
And if there's always a bias in AI, can I take it? I mean, I want to use it. So can I give the AI we're using, a bias towards creativity?
Yeah, is there always a bias in AI? I
Maybe.
don't know, but I mean, like, where does the bias come from? Usually, it comes from, you know, it's been learning from what humans have been doing, right? So we feed it, so it's basically picking up everything, including the bias, which is a problem. Now, the fun thing, if you scale it up, which is what you can do, right? You just said scaling, the bias becomes also more visible. So in a way, I would hope there's a chance also to basically that way see it more clearly, right? So the AI can it can be a mirror to us, right? And if you look yourself into the mirror, it's a lot easier to see what you're made up of than if you just kind of have to feel that yourself. So maybe that way that we can do a little bit about bias. That's an open discussion, I'm afraid. So is an AI always biased? And if you run it with a bias in it, I think in the end, how to protect the bias from getting out there, right? I mean, there are multiple ways. Either you have a human sitting there that's filtering, but then you need to make sure that the human isn't biased, right? Which isn't necessarily easy because that's where the whole bias is coming from. Or you basically make sure that you set guardrails within which you would say, okay, there can't be so much bias, right? Unsolved problem, I'm afraid. And we see a lot, that's why I said at the beginning, like we have this whole, the stuff is getting out there and going into the society, and we get the reactions right now, right? And their bias and ethics is a big piece of it. But
well,
I think IBM is doing actually quite some stuff on
we
that
are.
part, so.
And actually yesterday, during some of the sessions, we launched a new tool portfolio. Like it's a portfolio of IBM solutions that basically work to mitigate bias across a variety of different fields. So one being advertising. So in the actual programmatic buys that we have, how are you making sure that you're going to the right audiences and the right content, et cetera? So that becomes a plug-in to whatever the underlying algorithm is. Because to Bjorn's point, it's kind of when you see it scale, you start to see the gaps. And then separately, you can do that also for, I don't know, banking, investments. You know, it scales out. But yeah, there's a lot of work happening right now, and it's really interesting, right? Because, again, back to our point at scale, we have impact at scale.
Yes.
So one last question. In a previous conversation with Uli from T-Mobile / Deutsche Telekom, we kind of thought about how to move CAN forward. And one of the ideas was to have a complete world panel as a jury for some of the awards. Could we also do an AI jury?
Of course.
Of course.
But I think a spontaneous thought. I think what you could do is probably having a jury that you then hand over to the creatives, right? So you can basically have your in-house jury. So you get some data from the jury that's existing, and you might be able to basically take that jury home in a little black box, almost literally, and you run your advertisement through, and you go like, well, that's gonna win Cannes 95%.
Okay, I think plenty of people will be interested in that one. Thank you very much.
No, I mean, absolutely, right? I think you're actually already seeing it today with some of the activations that are winning, are leveraging a variety of different technologies. So I would say keep a lookout for that. But then separately, I think the biggest opportunity that we all have right now is staying open to all the different ways that we can evolve coming out of this last few years, right? You're seeing all the innovation happening. You're seeing all the opportunity, partnering and enabling partnerships with a variety of different diverse people with diverse skills, right? You're starting to see that. So I think my job, or at least what I'm trying to challenge myself with, is making sure that we continue to foster those opportunities for different and like-minded people to come together and then support them. So if you're going to do a jury, I will happily make you guys, bring everyone from the WPP crew and the IBM crew together, and we'll figure out what we can do.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.